I had a chance to sit down with members of the American raiding guild Blood Legion a few days ago, in the first of my new series of podcasts that I'll be doing around the theme of raiding. I've talked to Blood Legion before about a year ago for my research, and it was interesting to touch base with them again after so much has happened to their guild. And I have to say, it's been quite a year for Blood Legion. First, they were profiled in a documentary about raiding guilds, which put a spotlight particularly on them and their membership. And even the title of that documentary, Race for World First, caused a mixed reaction from the raiding world and put a lot of focus, for better or worse, on their guild. And I'm certain that they'll be dealing with the long-term impact of this documentary for quite some time to come. Add to that, they had exposure from a trip to Blizzcon and a very memorable battle against their competitor raiding guild Vodka. And finally, their end result in the Tier 13 race, being the first among the American guilds, and now third in the world to help beat out powerhouses like Method and Paragon. In some cases, I'd say they're really not the same guild that we've all come to know from the documentary that aired some months ago. They've had changes to their leadership and raiding roster, and their goals in raiding seem to be far more similar than they were when I talked to them over a year ago. And maybe that's part of what's contributed to their high ranking in the end, but of course any certainty about what led to that final ranking is inevitably coloured by what happened during the Tier 13 race. It may never be possible to separate the fact that so many other top guilds were not in the race from what actually happened in the end. And Blood Legion seems to have borne the brunt of that pessimism about the final rankings, even more so than Kin Raiders, Stars, and In Extremis, who ended up outranking even Blood Legion. From an analysis of the race itself, to jokes and jabs surrounding the LFR ban and Blood Legion's own bid for World First, changes to the goals and members of Blood Legion and what the future holds for the guild, and the at times surreal experience of being featured in a documentary, I get in-depth and personal with Affinity, Nodozz, Riggnaros, Shinafae, and Zoomkins of Blood Legion. We even find out who hates Spider-Man, who'd be quite happy to sleep in a bed of ham, who's not afraid of heights, and why speaking before you think can suck at times, and that sounding like Yoda is always way better than having Darth Vader's breathing problems. Alright, hi everybody, this is Ladan from Raiding Research, and I want to say good day to you all, and welcome to our little podcast here. I have some very special guests with me. I've got members of the Guild Blood Legion who've agreed to participate in a little group discussion. And I'll just very quickly read off their names and actually ask them very briefly to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Shinafae. Could you tell us where you're located in the United States and what do you do in Blood Legion?
Hello, I'm currently living in Arizona, completing an undergraduate degree. And I am Blood Legion's Warlock.
Oh, one and only, or?
We have some trials that are very promising, but right now I am currently the only member Warlock.
Very good. Well, it's nice to meet you. And we've got Zoomkins with us. Why don't you tell us where you are and what do you do in the guild?
Hi, I'm Zoomkins. I live in northern Connecticut, and I'm a balanced druid. I was probably one of the first to actually make member. In the guild. Been there for a long time.
So how long is that then?
Almost 2.5 years now.
Wonderful, great. And we've got Nodozz with us. Hi.
Hi.
Where are you and what do you do?
I'm in Iowa. I play a holy paladin. Now, I was a rogue for a long time. When the documentary happened, I was a rogue. But yeah, I live in Sioux City, Iowa, which is like the middle of the United States. Most people have probably never heard of it if they're outside the United States. Yeah, I've been in the guild almost 3 years now.
Excellent. And we've got Affinity with us. Tell us, what do you do?
Hi, I'm Affinity. I live in Missouri, and I play a disc priest.
Very good. And to round us out here, we've got Riggnaros. Tell us where you are and what do you do?
Oh, hey, what's up? My name is Charles. I play a Blood Death Knight. Myself and Absalom are the two tanks. I'm the raid leader for Blood Legion. I live about an hour east of Memphis. Just got out of the Marine Corps about 2 years ago and moved back home. And then that's when I joined the guild not too much longer after that. So I've been in a little bit over a year now in Blood Legion.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for joining me. And it's a nice geographical distribution across at least the sort of eastern half of the United States. And I encourage everyone outside of the US to take a bit of time to check out where they are on the map. So it's very good. Well, and as I said, I'm Ladan and I'm located in Durham, which is in the United Kingdom in the northeast of England. Well, I asked the guys, I've sent a few sort of talking points that I wanted to kind of go over with everybody today, and I think what I'll do is just dive right in. I did a little bit of data mining. In fact, just to give a little bit of background to our listeners, as everyone who's familiar with my work knows, I'm currently doing PhD doctoral research about raiding. And I had the pleasure of speaking to Blood Legion a little over a year ago. In fact, before Cataclysm came out, we did sort of a general group interview that I've done with other raiding guilds where we looked at issues like how do you structure yourselves, what's important to you as a guild, how do the raiders function, how do you work through progression and things like that. At the time, they were anticipating Cataclysm, and as well, there had been a new trailer that had come out that some of you had probably seen at that point, which came out around, I believe, Blizzcon of 2010 or 11. No, 2010. Getting all my dates wrong here. And so everyone got this idea of this new trailer that was coming out, this attention being placed on this highly ranked American guild, which of course, some of the members who are actually with us right now did participate in the documentary. So, but of course I followed along how Blood Legion was doing ever since that point. Got quite an interest in how they were doing. And Tier 11, they finished world number 8. Tier 12, they finished world number 13, and Tier 13, they actually finished world number 3 on the 25-man ranking scale. They not only were third in the world, but they became the top US-ranked guild, and they had been third ranked up until that point. So a very significant conclusion to the 13th tier. And I just wondered, I'm going to start with you, Riggnaros. I just wondered, you've put yourselves in a much stronger worldwide position with this, tier conclusion. And how has that affected your guild? Was that what you were hoping for? Is it better than you expected? Did you hope for higher than that? How has it been?
The whole past year in the guild, there's been, just when you listed those kills there, the actual dip during Firelands was pretty much in the midst of the leadership change altogether. And then this was like the first tier that we've actually had everything going the way we wanted it and things like that. So, that's more or less why we were able, that and combined with, the other issues surrounding this tier. But from a U.S. sense, we went into the tier with the goal of, finishing U.S. first and, and obviously improving on our world ranking from the previous tier. And, we were able to accomplish that. And, we still have pretty high aspirations going forward.
That's great. So tell me a little bit about how things have been since you finished the tier. Describe how it is, like Zoomkins. I'm going to turn to you now. What do you guys generally do now that you've actually finished your rankings? You can relax now, but I'm feeling that you're not stopped raiding. So what are you doing?
Well, we as a guild, we're very heavy on alts. Like, we are working now on making other runs to gear our alts for next tier. Like, we're always preparing for the next step. Like I said before, there could be another instance that comes out with more bosses. So we're going to keep farming, like we did with the tier before in Firelands, farming legendaries. We're going to keep farming for the rogues. But we do other fun stuff. Like, we do have sales runs going on, to get people, having tons of gold to be able to buy BOEs or whatever to get prepared. There's a lot of events that we still plan. But we are more laid back, and our raiding schedule is down to 1 or 2 nights a week for the main raid, but then the majority of the raid continues to raid from Wednesday, Thursday, and even on the weekends it's in 10-mans. Chris and Rig also work in we call QRF, it's like our quick response force that they play in that has 10-mans that work on heroics.
What's the goal of that, though? What does that mean? Nodozz, what's the response force do?
Yeah, it's actually a different guild. Our guild is Blood Legion Spec Ops. It's a guild that we started with a bunch of our 3rd and 4th alts about a year ago. And it's just to go in there after progression and see what we can do on 10-man. Kind of like Paragon did back in Firelands, where they cleared it on 10-man. We just do the same thing, but we do it on alts. Just to basically do the whole progression race over again, back from ground zero. Many different classes for most of the members. and it's just a lot of fun. The atmosphere is a lot more relaxed, and we go in there and just do what we can on 10 men on these alts, and just have a lot of fun. It's a lot of the really like hardcore members are in there, and a lot of people have been around for a while. Just a good time. I really enjoy it, and I mean I love raiding like as much as I can. So it's basically just another progression guild that we do on 10 men on alts and like really bad gear. It really forces you to play above and beyond like what you're used to playing. 10 men has a unique structure where there's not that many people in the raid, so when people mess up, it's really obvious to see who's struggling, and it keeps you on top of your game. I don't know, it's like really really fun. You really see who the good players are.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just, as you were telling me that, I just kind of pulled up your rankings on World Progress, and you guys are ranked 5th on your server. Does that frustrate the other guilds on your server, though, that are trying to do a bit more sort of serious 10-man raiding, or has that frustrated them at all, the sort of extra guild?
I think it probably does, because, I mean, it's just the same. Everyone who raids progression, or quote-unquote progression, on Blood Legion Spec Ops are main raiders in Blood Legion, so they probably think that they're getting kind of cheated in a way. But we don't look at it like that. We have the guild, just we have another guild bank, and there's a lot of our fans and community members who want to be a part of Blood Legion, and we invite them, we do raids with them, we do a lot of community activities with them. So Blood Legion Spec Ops is kind of like our way to reach out to the community with that. And I don't know, we don't really put a lot of time into it. We really don't. Like we only raided about 2 nights last week on the Spec Ops raid. We try not to get burned out too much, but we still like to go in there and push what we can. I'm sure they do get upset, especially if we take like server second, which is probably likely. They probably won't be too happy, but we just do it for fun. We like to raid, and we don't want to make all the raiders do like an additional 25-man heroic raid. People would get burned out, and there's a lot of people who really don't like to play that much. So I don't know, it's just what we like to do, and it's one of the great things about being in Blood Legion. You can basically get a heroic raid going whenever you want, and there's always raiding happening, there's always alts happening, and that's, you know, one of the great things about being Blood Legion, and that's one of the reasons why we do really well.
That's nice. It's interesting too. I mean, I've seen so many different variations of how different guilds approach, you know, stuff like this. So it's nice to and interesting. I did wonder because I'd seen that before, and I wondered what it was. But thanks for clearing that up. So Shinafae, I've got a question for you. Can you give us a general idea of what a day in the life of a Blood Legion raider is like during progression? What was it like for you particularly, and in general, you know, how much time do you have to put into progression, and how much of a sort of disruption to your ordinary life was it? You know, as you said, you're a student, but I'm sure that still got in the way of studies.
Well, this progression year was very fortuitous because my classes were concluding the week of normals, and that first week, heroic progression is not possible. You have to clear the instance on normal, so our schedule was somewhat lighter than it would be in the following weeks. Once the heroic modes were available, we just go all in. We were online the first day when the server came up, and actually that first day, because we were going through the beginning boss of the instance, they tended to be a bit easier. We were up till, you know, the next morning at 5 a.m. server time, you know, getting our bosses down. That's enabling a lot of our world first kills. It's just a lot of time. You have to front load it, and thereafter in the progression cycle we'd be doing 10-hour days easily, but we finish very quickly compared to a guild that might begin a bit earlier, so it's worth it. Just front load your time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any particular personal strategy to kind of get through those long days? Like, do you try and sort of pack up on nutritious food, or, you know, take breaks, or what do you try and do to kind of get through that? Because it's quite a session, even in the short term.
Generally, when progression is going on, there's that feeling of competition and that adrenaline rush from being in contention for these world force kills, and the time really you do not notice how quickly it's passing. I would really only need maybe a break to get another bottle of water, something to that effect. But obviously after the raid would be concluded for the day, I try to make a point of going straight to sleep and getting a full night of sleep to be prepared for the next day, not let fatigue affect my play.
It's good. I know it's interesting hearing how people approach it. So, Affinity, for you, do you have anything else that you would do differently, or was it sort of the same experience as what Shinafae was talking about?
It was definitely really similar. I'm kind of in a position where I don't have a whole lot of responsibility, so I don't have a job, and I'm currently not in school. So that kind of enables me to run a more relaxed schedule outside of the raid hours. So I think that kind of enabled me to prepare a little bit better mentally and physically, so that I could be there as much as 100% as much as possible.
Yeah, it's challenging. I know that there's been other times when folks from other guilds have posted sort of their example day in life, and it's always, obviously, for obvious reasons, the hardest on those that don't have a flexible schedule, that perhaps still have a full-time job or very little ability to kind of break away from their normal duties and still manage that schedule. So it's interesting to see. One thing I'll ask you, Affinity, I'll just tell you, I did a bit of a sort of casual calculation, because I was wondering, because there's always that statement of oh, well, the guys at the top are constantly putting in loads and loads of time. They raid every single day, hours upon hours, and sort of endless barrage. And I'll admit that before I started kind of working with top guilds in my research, I kind of had the same assumption that they were playing 24/7 and that there wasn't much of a break and it was very intensive. But what I noticed, it's much more, as you said, Shinafae, sort of top front of the process. You pack in as much time as you can to get through the content quickly, and then things seem to mellow out a bit to that 1 to 2 days a week, especially for those that prefer not to raid, like Nodozz was talking about with your special ops kind of side guild. You do have the luxury of just raiding a few hours a week if you want to. When I calculated that, when compared it to sort of a middle-of-the-road hardcore raiding guild that does 4 nights a week, 4 to 5 hours, each time, so 20-odd hours a week, takes much longer to get through the material. It's actually about the same, if not more time gets put in by those middle-of-the-road raiding guilds. Does that surprise you?
No, it typically, the guilds that do not clear the content as quickly and maintain a 4 to 5 hour a night, 5 day a week schedule, they will end up rating net hours vastly more than we do for progression. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a interesting myth to try and kind of dissipate, because I think there's always that assumption. Why do you think that is, Affinity? I'm going to ask you that now. Is that why do you think that there's this assumption that you guys are just constantly playing raiding at that level and you never stop, that you're no-lifers, I suppose is the term?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's going to be some people that would like to be able to play at that level and feel that they can't because they can't necessarily raid those hours. And, I think something that kind of compares is, even if we do raid more, we raid more because we want to. We're going for those rankings. Some of the other guilds that only raid 3-4 nights in a week, maybe are raiding those hours because that's what they feel that they can commit to the game. But players like myself, Riggs, Nodozz, we're doing this to be at a really high level and go as far as possible. So, we're going to put in more commitment there because we feel that that's what we need to do.
Fair enough, and it's interesting that you've approached it. Just since I know you're the raid leader, Riggnaros, for Blood Legion, have you? I mean, I'm thinking that most of you've come from other guilds at some point, even if it was a few years ago. So you've probably had different experiences raiding with other types of guilds. What process or structure do you have in place as far as the raiding process goes that makes Blood Legion perhaps distinctive or effective in its approach to raiding?
I'm pretty certain. I mean, I can speak. I've only been in a handful of guilds, like 4 total. So I mean, some people have been in, much more than that. Some people not so much. But I can definitely say that it's somewhat of a unique environment here, just due to how much focus that we put on being disciplined and, very well organized to a manner of, whether it be farm or progression, every time that we're in there raiding, I try and, make sure that we are, it's okay to have fun during farm, but, at the same time when you're in there, you train like you fight like you train. It's like the old, saying that people would go with. You don't want to really just go in there and have people messing around. more or less, we're, every night that we're in there raiding on mains during, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it's just 110% focus each and every pull, and, don't really try and slip. So, I mean, we try to promote that atmosphere as much as possible. And, I mean, it definitely showed, like I said, with the changes that we've had in place over the past year. I mean, that was one of the reasons that we were able to improve so much this tier, is just our, our discipline level overall.
I noticed it's been circulated a fair bit, Riggnaros. I know there's a few decided reasons that this was circulated, and we'll get into that in a bit when we talk about the fun topic of the LFR ban. But I know you guys were circulating the sort of spreadsheet that you devised to plan out how you were going to legitimately take advantage of the LFR in the early days. And
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't really want to interrupt you, but I mean,
No, go for it.
there was a lot of misconception about that. That spreadsheet was not an LFR spreadsheet. We actually did that on normals. We cleared 6 normal instances the first week. We put a lot of focus on our alts. Once we figured out that 6 runs were going to be possible, we started bringing alts into the main raid and funneling gear to a minimum eye level of 378 required on everyone's alt. And that was not an LFR spreadsheet. That was a complete normal run spreadsheet, and we had just planned on doing LFRs after the normals, because that 6 normal run took the majority of the week all the way up through Friday, and then we just cleaned up with very few LFRs on pieces that were missing, and we had anywhere from 3 to 5 mains per group in these 6 groups set up. So I know that was a large misconception. I mean, we posted it on our front page. I think people just attached LFR to it because of how much LFR drama was going on, but that was actually a normal mode. And I just felt like pointing that, because I mean, there's a large distinction on being able to clear that many normal modes. Not very many guilds would have been able to do that.
No, and thank you very much for making that clear, because I think that you're right. There was a big misconception, and it's good that we can hopefully keep clearing that up. What I was going to say too is that it's interesting though, because when I look at it, I find these things quite fascinating. That level of planning and organisation. What made you decide to do this? How did you plan to sort of arrange that, and when did the process begin for you to start sort of mapping out this kind of combination of normal runs for the guild?
It actually started during the beginning of Cataclysm, or during Tier 11 rather. We kind of saw how important alts were, but we were again kind of fighting the divide among the guild at that time. A little over a year ago on, whether we wanted to make the push to be a hardcore guild, or if we were just going to stay, in the top 10 to 15. I mean, there's obviously a, gigantic difference between being in, the world top 15 and the world top 5, leaps and bounds. And, we kind of knew what we had to do as far as commitment level wise, and, having the ability to stack raids during progression for, comp stacking, whether or not you need, 5 of whatever class for this or that, and the only way that you're feasibly going to be able to do that outside of maintaining like a 50-man roster is just maintain your 30 to 35-man roster, but ensure that everyone has 1 or 2 characters that they maintain just as well as they do their main. And it kind of started during Tier 11, and during Firelands we really took advantage of it, especially with the legendary staff farming. I think we were up to 12 or 13. And we finished a couple more after Dragon Soul came out. But, we decided to put that focus on it once more or less we got the direction that we wanted to go, and that was during Firelands. There were just a lot of bumps during that. But, this is when it kind of came to, see the good out of all the effort that had been put in this tier.
That's very good. Thanks for sharing that. So, there was a lot of anticipation of the previous race, and looking at the expectation of how things were going to go, and obviously Tier 13's been quite different than other tiers. But tell me the truth, Zoomkins. Were you surprised by Kin Raiders?
Yeah, very surprised, because like what a lot of people have seen, there's a lot of familiar names, like in the top 10 that you see on a lot of different tiers. I mean, they shift because guilds are, made up by other players. Some people leave, some people come, you get new ones. But Kin Raiders, everyone was very, very surprised, because I think I don't know about their rankings beforehand, but they weren't in a top 10 or top 5 before.
They finished the last tier, tier 12 in the 11th spot.
Oh.
Overall, which was 10th actually. They actually did finish in the top 10 for 25 man, but 11th overall. So, yeah.
Yeah, everyone is actually so surprised. People were actually even wondering if they had I think some of the same hot fixes or changes on the fights for their clients, in Korean, because there was just a lot of different speculation on whether it had been done legitimately or whatnot, and they proved that it all was.
Yeah, I guess as I remember, Method said at the end of Firelands, when the Paragon beat them to the first spot, one of the members said to me, well, we saw the video and we realized we just got outplayed. There's just that realization that some guilds are just better at certain times. They just did a better job. But the thing that's interesting with a guild like Kin Raiders is the thing that has been going around a lot with both them and Stars, which is the second ranked 25-man raiding guild, is that they had for a period of time double reset on the Korean and Taiwanese servers. And some have been claiming that gave them an advantage. And Star's response, I haven't had a chance to talk to Kin Raiders, but Star's response was, well, no, because by the time that started happening, we'd already geared up our most essential members, so it wasn't really a benefit or a disadvantage for us. That's their explanation. But, were you familiar with that as well, Zoomkins? The sort of suggestion that they had an edge because they had these double resets for 6 weeks.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who kind of are looking for excuses. I mean, they simply played very, very well. I mean, one thing that did help them catch up was probably farming in the legendary staves. But, for us, we worked very, very hard to, get, our number of staves by getting so many raids, and it helped them gear out, extra mage alts with some staves, but it wasn't it was a big factor, but it wasn't,
Right.
the entire
The
factor.
ultimate factor was they just played better. And once we realized, everybody was kind of in the gray area up front, oh my god, and because we spent the first week of Spine, either stunning mobs to kill them and using Solar Beam as well, that got changed and pretty much put us back at square one, and they had been learning the fight with the strat they killed it with the entire time, and it showed.
Yeah, hats off to them, really. So it's quite exciting, but it's also challenging in a way because a lot of times the players in Korea have been kind of in their own little bubble, and it's there's not as much interaction between players in Asia as there have been between players in, say, Europe and North America. So hopefully there'll be a way to sort of facilitate that interaction, because another thing Stars said to me was that they were very, very happy to see Asian guilds moving up, because it's nice to see hopefully a more sort of level playing field, or at least theoretically level, so that you've got more than just the EU and US guilds dominating the top 10 or 20. You've got a nice mixture of guilds from different parts of the world, which is truly, that makes it a global race. But others are sort of dictating the sort of, now the US and the EU guilds will just no longer be dominating the top 20, and it'll become an all Asian top 20. Of course, that remains to be seen. But do you agree with that, Nodozz, that this could be is this beginning of the end for guilds like yourselves and like Paragon and Method for sort of being in the top 20?
No, I think we're more hungry than ever right now. I think our guild over the past 2 years has gone through this leadership transition and core member transition where about 2 years ago we were not really wanting to be world number one. We had actually said on numerous occasions that we were never going to put in that much time to even compete with that type of time investment. But really over the last year, ever since really Riggnaros came and a lot of the leadership structures changed, and that whole goal of the guild has completely changed, and now we're ready and more willing than ever to put in the time that it takes to be the best in the world. And that's really been just this last year where we were able to actually implement what we wanted to as far as our time investment. And I think what we have right now is just a lot of people who are on the same page with that and are ready to go forward. And I see a lot of people They are gonna keep going for a long time. The Legion's not going anywhere at all. We'll be up there top 5 every tier. You can bet on that.
I like that. It's good. Bit of energy there, stated. Affinity, what is your strategy as a guild to ensure you retain your membership? Because what's interesting when I look at the top guilds, because you have this sort of feast or famine sort of, approach to the raiding, for the most part, you're gearing up for these tier, next release, next patch, whatever. And then there's these long stretches between, and my experience has been when top raiders from top guilds stop playing, it's very difficult for them to come back and be casual. They're either hardcore raiding at this level or they just don't play at all. And you've had things like the new Star Wars MMO that's come out, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the latest tier, the content. People were quite dissatisfied with that, and the nature of the fights. Spine being such a challenging fight for some, and not challenging in a fun way, and so on like that. And also the anticipation of Miss Pandaria. Some people seem to have a somewhat mixed feeling about that. What are you guys going to do to ensure that you can achieve that vision that Nodozz just talked about? How are you going to be sure you've got the roster come the next expansion?
Well, player retention obviously is always going to be an issue in a top-end guild like this, simply because of the amount of time we put in and how we front-load it. The thing that I feel that Blood Legion has is we have a community. We aren't just a raiding guild. We get together at Blizzcon. A lot of people are real-life friends. There's just a lot more to this guild than just raiding. Raiding's a big part of it, but that's not all we offer as a guild. And a lot of people stick around because they enjoy being here and they enjoy playing and just, hanging out with a lot of the members that are in this guild.
Yeah, it's nice to see that. And in fact, that's another interesting factor that, again, I've just been observing that people don't always realize, is that strong desire for nurturing that social aspect in any raiding guild, be the most casual to the most sort of progression oriented, and it becomes something that people are very protective of. They'll often play for each other more than the content, which is usually another reason why people stick around a game, even when they've sort of exhausted their expertise. They can't play any better than they already do. They just, it's each other that keeps you there. So it's interesting to see that. So Shinafae, how big is your roster? How many members do you have right now?
Typically, we want to keep a roster of about 35 people.
Okay.
Obviously, we are always trying to recruit and strengthen the roster. As Affinity noted, with a guild that puts in this much time front-loaded, roster turnover is to some extent always going to be an issue, but recruitment is somewhat the lifeblood of a guild, and fortunately we have had the experience of getting a lot of really solid applicants in, so we're very optimistic about the strength of our roster going into the next expansion.
That's great. Well, can't wait for it to come out. I'm looking forward to it myself because I should be done with my thesis by then. I can actually play again. So now I wanted to kind of go back a little bit and talk about the documentary Race for World First. And I know that at least a couple of you were filmed in it, and were you also filmed in it, Riggnaros? I don't know if you would have direct interviews, but were you on the film at all?
No, not in the published version. They did some filming, but it wasn't used.
Ah, right. And how about you, Affinity? Were you involved in the filming?
I was not. I'm a recent addition as a Firelands to the guild.
Ah, isn't that fun? Okay. And I'm guessing the same for you, Shinafae, is the relatively newer member.
Yes, I come in during Tier 11 farm, so it was already
very
done.
good. So this is interesting. I really wanted to kind of have a bit of a discussion about this because it's from a research perspective, it's quite fascinating. Guilds that have kind of been focused in on something like this, most of us will go our whole lives without being part of any documentary of any kind. And then those of us that do, it usually has some sort of a transformative effect, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. Now, I didn't touch on you, Zoomkins or Nodozz, because you both were featured in the documentary, interviewed, and both at BlizzCon, and also there were little special segments that the documentarians devoted to both of you. And I wanted to ask all of you just to think a little bit about how it's been, especially I'm guessing that for some members it's probably been a bit more of a experience for those who were there before the documentary started. So Zoomkins, you've been in the guild for so long now. I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about the experience of the documentary for you personally, and also what you've observed its effect on the guild in general.
Well, when it first started, I jumped right on to be a part of it. I really liked the idea, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I've talked to the two guys who filmed the entire thing, Zach and John, from start to finish for the most part. And my experience with it was very enjoyable. They did a lot of footage because they actually live in New York, which is really close to me here in Connecticut. And the responses I got from it after they released it were, really good also. I've had a lot of people, support me, write me sort of emails and everything talking about it. And it was a very fun experience. They did do a lot more footage though than they put in the movie, and that's one part that I was kind of upset about, because I thought they did a lot more fun things and stuff, but they just didn't include them.
Did that surprise you? The process of what was actually captured, like what you were anticipating as opposed to what actually happened.
Yeah, it was very surprising, because we actually filmed a number of days, and in the end they used a couple. Just a couple interviews. But I guess you always want to film more, so you're not left with less for the final project.
Yeah, I think that's generally what happens with these kinds of projects. Do you know if they had anticipated that it would be a longer film initially? Because it was only a little over an hour, so it wasn't like a full-length feature. What I'm interested in is what they explained to you at the very beginning and what ended up being there. Was it quite a transition for you, like from what you understood it to be initially and what it actually ended up being at the final product?
No, it's pretty much what they wanted. I think they wanted it to be a little longer, but one thing that they kind of went over too was that all the clips that they put out for like trailers and interviews and snippets, they didn't want to include in the video, because they didn't want people to end up rewatching content that they had already seen from like the YouTube channel and whatnot. But they were going for a full-length feature, and I know a lot of people wanted to see more gameplay from all the different guilds that were featured, but they really wanted to sort of capture the aspect of the people who play the game and who they are more or less than the game itself.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma, and I think on the one hand, it's easy for us as sort of participants of the raiding community to be very analytical of what's going on, but I think they had probably, I would imagine, a fairly fine line to sort of navigate as far as how much do you sort of share to make it understandable for people who don't raid, how much do you make understandable for people who do raid and sort of are at a sort of high level of experience and understanding, and then, as you said, how do you sort of bring in that human factor, which is of course quite essential. My impression though, from sort of, because there has been a bit of a mixed review, especially when I've talked to other raiders, that they felt that it wasn't, the title really let down the film. The title was a little bit misleading from their perspective. They were expecting a little bit more about the process of the world first, and that they felt was a little bit tacked on at the end, and that it felt like there was almost two films going on in the documentary. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's just that those viewers just didn't get it?
100%, actually, because dealing with them for the most part, they are two very different people. They did have very, very different ideas while we were filming. The title, actually, they didn't have a title for the majority of the entire filming process. They just kind of had an idea, and they started to do the interviews and go with it. The title was actually, we didn't even know till it was pretty much released. Because how they started is they contacted a bunch of different guilds, and a lot of them actually turned them down, but a lot of members in our guild actually wanted to be a part of it. But the only problem was they are here in America, and there are a lot of predominant European guilds, so flying back and forth to Europe every couple of weeks wasn't really an option for them. So they kind of did a lot more just small like Skype interviews and such, even for like guilds over in Australia, like Adept and such.
Yeah, that was very interesting actually for me to watch because I've actually interviewed almost every single person. Actually, yeah, I have interviewed almost every single person they put in the video, which it was really fun to look at that and see how it was presented in a slightly different way. But I thought it was actually very the way that they tried to represent the geography of the race and the different players in the Tier 11 race was actually it was a very creative attempt to try and represent what's to me is a very abstract process, which isn't actually run in the same way that other races, quote unquote, are run. So I thought it was actually quite an interesting attempt to sort of get through that. Something I wanted to ask you about Zoomkins when I, sort of rewatched the documentary was something that you talked about a couple of interesting concepts, and I don't mean to embarrass you here, but obviously it's been out there already. You talked about the fact that in your capacity as as a boomkin in a sort of a high-end raiding guild, that you could potentially have an effect or be sort of acknowledged or known by other people in different parts of the world potentially, and that that sort of connection or that world recognition that you really appreciate. And I wondered, has that changed at all for you? You mentioned getting emails, so are you getting fan mail now? Are you getting attention that you didn't anticipate? And how does that feel? Are you loving that still?
I mean, of course, it feels good to have a people sort of like a fan base or something like that. I guess more or less also what I was going about when I said that is that I could do things in my community, kind of like how I said in the film, and you can be good at it, but your reach is only so limited. But something like this game where it reaches, over 12 million people all around the world, and if you can be good in something like this, it reaches a large audience worldwide, and it's awesome because people react different in different countries, and you get to meet a lot of different people. The rankings, our rankings here that we did this tier, I've had a lot of people ask me for, strategies, tips, talk to me about different things. And, of course, I've loved the attention, and I'd love helping and giving back to the community if I can.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because I could imagine that while people enjoy attention, they probably also, it's one of those, it's a double-sidedness of celebrity, that people appreciate it but also resent it, both those observing and experiencing it. And this is a relatively new experience. We've had individuals who've been quite sort of famous, like Kungan is a good example of sort of a famous raider within the raiding community. And then you've got famous raiding guilds, but they're a little bit more sort of nameless faces, sort of big groups of individuals that are sort of part of a process. So it's more that Paragon is famous as opposed to all the individual members. That's the difference. Whereas for you guys, you've not only explained who you are, but your family members have been on the video, filmed in your homes. We see what your faces look like. There's access to you as individuals, and I just wonder if that sort of intense exposure is sort of since it's so new for us that sometimes people have a negative reaction to something that's new, but are you okay with that? And do you sort of, I just wondered what you think about that sort of, I suppose, abstract concept I just threw out there. But, it is different for us and we're not used to that sort of individualized attention. But it sounds like you like it, so you're okay with it. But was that the case for everybody in the guild? And did some people not appreciate the attention that the guild got? And did some people who actually participate, was it the same for you, Nodozz? Are you okay with the attention that you've gotten? Has it been all positive? Have you also gotten emails with people sort of sending you favorable comments? Have you been getting trolled? Or?
Yeah, I would say mine is slightly less positive than Zoomkins' experience. Just because I wasn't supposed to be really featured in the film at all. I wasn't supposed to be in it initially, but they knew that I was kind of an emotional wild card, and that they could get me to say things that may or may not be interesting to viewers. So they would ask me baited questions. And I got trolled a lot about one of the responses where they pretty much asked me to say the response 100%. They said, "Can you say this for us?" And I just said it. And it was
that the one where you were one of the best?
Yeah, it was that.
Yeah,
one.
That's what I wrote down for you.
That was 100%.
Amazing.
They asked me to say something to degree. They're like, can you just say something like this, and I
If I
just said
could interject really quick. They actually asked me the same thing too, and I just couldn't do it. It felt way too bad. I don't know.
yeah, it felt really weird, and I think we actually did like a couple takes on it because it just seemed so fake, and I would never talk like that, but they just wanted me to say that, and I just went along with it. So that was like one of the things to clear that up. I'm not really like that arrogant about I'm the best in the world. Yeah, I wouldn't even pretend that for a second. But I mean, so just clear that up. Yeah, I got trolled on that a lot. I think people made like a thread about it somewhere. I didn't even read it, but yeah. So it was slightly less positive for me. I didn't really have the whole family thing like in as Zoomkins did. He had this big emotional story, and that kind of like people felt bad and they sympathized with him, and he got a lot of fan mail and mentions about that. But mine was just like that one arrogant response to the question that they like made me answer, which is fine. It's okay. I don't mind it. But I only did it to begin with because it's kind of like a completely unique thing, like you said. That who like is ever gonna get a chance to participate in a documentary about something that they do as a hobby? And I'd been playing this game for so long, and then hey, these guys want to do a documentary about how you've done in this game and about how you're pushing to be like one of the best in the world. And I'm like, heck yeah, that seems like fun. Like, when do you get a chance to do that? Almost never. So, I mean, they flew all around. They flew out to Blizzcon, and that's where I was interviewed. You had their whole professional lighting and camera setup, and it was all very professional, and it was just a lot of fun. And they were great guys, and the whole experience was a lot of fun. That was really why I just did it. I didn't really do it for fame or anything like that. It was a good experience, and I mean, the title of the documentary is obviously unfortunate, but and it didn't necessarily paint Blood Legion in like a great light, I wouldn't say. A lot of internal drama between like some of the older members, but I like to think that a lot of that's behind us now. Our leadership structure has completely changed since then, and we're a much stronger and more cohesive guild than we have been in the past.
Yeah, that's very interesting actually, because it's almost like, I suppose that's the downside of participating in a documentary like that, is that it's sort of perhaps a more time elapsed, but a sort of form of kind of a snapshot of the experience, and some level you may be forever burned. This would be set in stone that this is how your guild is, when in fact the majority of the folks that we're talking to on this call tonight weren't even really established members of the guild at that point, when a lot of the filming was done. So it's kind of an interesting fact that and perhaps illustrative of how raiding guilds can be, that there's a change in the roster and the name, but if the experience is indelibly linked between the name of the guild and the documentary itself, you sort of have this kind of forever emblazoned kind of experience that you will always kind of have with you as a guild. And I'd be very curious to see how's that been for you, like Riggnaros. How has that been for you as a sort of almost a sidelines observer to this process, but the beneficiary for both good and bad of the outcome of the documentary?
It definitely had its good points, and it's definitely had its bad points as well. I think that regardless of how it goes, you're not really shaking it. I mean, it's the film's out, it's not going anywhere, and things like that. That the biggest thing that we have to deal with as a guild is more or less the image that it painted the guild as, which at the time, that's more or less what the guild was. It was undergoing a complete leadership change, and as you could see during the film, I mean, that was, if anything, that just highlighted the reasons why and things like that the leadership was changing. I mean, and Eric moved on, and then Sabina, or Lolly, she ended up retiring also. So, I mean, the biggest thing I would just we try and make sure people understand is, that's not what the guild is now. That's not really anything remotely close to how things are. I mean, things are really structured, disciplined. There's not really much, if any, turmoil among the leadership. And, there's no split direction among the guild. We're a guild that knows our identity at this point, and we know what we need to do going forward. I mean, obviously high aspirations, but we're with realistic ones as well. I mean, we know that there's a lot of work to still get done. And, just having the world first tied to it, that kind of, brings a ton of trolling along with it. But like Dan and Chris both pointed out, it's something that we didn't really have a choice over. We just more or less were participating in the documentary as a guild, and that's what they chose for a title. So.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that one for sure. The fact that you're participating, but you don't have a lot of control over what's done with the documentary and the outcome. So it'd be interesting to see the sort of the lasting effects. So wanted to turn back a little bit to the Tier 13 race. And I haven't picked on you for a little bit, Shinafae, so I'm gonna direct this question to you first. We talked about this a little bit offline before we started the interview, and I sort of reminded you all, took you down a little bit of memory lane. And I'm gonna put these up on the podcast for our listeners to view as well, if you haven't seen these. Just a bit of a reminder, hopefully everyone will remember or if they've already forgotten. In early December, it was discovered after the new patch came out with the new tier of content that there was an exploit, a potential exploit related to the LFR. And some guilds opted to take advantage and exploit this bug in order to sort of expedite the acquisition of loot. And as a result, it was actually a fairly large-scale exploit. It was guilds actually on every type of server actually participated in this. So it wasn't uniquely European or uniquely anything else, although that was sort of thrown around for a while. As a result, unfortunately, those guilds, or fortunately, really don't have an opinion in that regard, but the resulting outcome was, however, that a lot of guilds were banned. Guilds that were actually largely usually in contention for top of the tier, or top of the race in the tier. So what ended up happening was a guild like yourselves, Blood Legion, who didn't participate in the LFR bug exploit, found yourselves without a lot of competitors around you. You were sort of free and easy to go ahead. But that resulted in a bit of jokes being made during the banned period. There was a very funny photograph of Eric. He's got his hands outstretched, and this is a photo from Blizzcon, as I understand it,
Yes.
with a few various jokes made, and it evolved over the course of the ban period. Added on, and of course its final evolution was when shockingly Kin Raiders exceeded everybody. There was a little picture of them saying other guilds banned, world first guys for Blood Legion, and under it was a photograph or a snapshot of the WoW progress results and a guy gesturing saying Asians, which little memory of the aliens image there. So very, very humorous, and I wonder what you guys thought about these. Were you following along with all of these little troll little images and so on, and did you see them as they were sort of unfolding, Shinafae? Did you know about these as they happened, or?
Really, during progression, I consider it like I would any kind of competition or tournaments. I was in sports for a very long time, and I just really did not at all frequent any of the forums. I was focused on my job, what I had to do every day, and really only found out about any of this well after it had occurred.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good strategy in a way, I suppose. Do you think if you'd seen it while it was happening, would it have bothered you?
It really wouldn't have affected my position or what I was doing in the guild, and I generally, again, I'm used to competitive environments, and sometimes people will do things like that, both because it is entertaining for themselves and, any various other reasons. So I'd put no stock in it. It's not going to affect what I'm trying to do or what the guild's trying to do. We still have a job to do, and that's what we need to put our energy and focus into, rather than looking at forums.
Okay,
I mean,
fair enough.
Just to tie into what she was going to say, I mean, we more or less had a general rule of thumb during progression, and that was, we didn't really talk about, other guilds, any of the LFR shit, and, things like that. It was more so just, when we're in there raiding, that stuff, you can talk about it before the raid or after the raid, but when we're in there, people just need to be focused and, that's worried about what we're doing. It's, we're playing against ourselves when we're in there raiding, and I think that really, eliminated that really being too much of a problem.
Right. So the other ones I noticed, the other videos that I thought were there was a couple of videos as well, just to add to our sort of trip down memory lane. There was one with the classic Dimitri video where he discovered that guilds had been banned, and he does this little dance routine. Did you guys see that one? Did you see that one, Affinity? Or did you see any of the videos or any of the other things? Or were you like Shinafae and just kind of
Yeah,
not paying attention?
I was paying attention to it more for my own general entertainment. I thought a lot of them were pretty funny. I didn't really watch the Dimitri one, but the one that I did watch was the Olympic, the ice skating thing. And I thought that was just absolutely hilarious that somebody actually took the time to do that, and I got a good kick out of it.
Yeah, that one was quite hilarious because I don't know if you guys ever watched the actual Olympics, that actual event. I saw it when it happened, and it was quite shocking and very dramatic. So it was brilliant. I thought that was very, very clever. So yeah, not all bad. Well, that's a nice thing, actually. I think a lot of times there will be a lot of going back and forth. There was some jabbing at the European guilds, some jokes geared towards Paragon, of course, because Paragon had a very dramatic drop in their rankings, which, you know, wasn't expected. And, you know, they had to kind of have a sense of humor as well, and they really did. So there's been a lot of that back and forth. I suppose on some level, Riggnaros, would you sort of agree with my sort of suggestion here that it's kind of part and parcel of the competitive atmosphere of a race like this? We don't really have the kind of, you know, posturing before a boxing match that goes on. You know, we've got this sort of thing. Is this our way of showing that we're competitive, or, you know, is it a bit, or do you think it's a bit of a silly thing?
I think it's just dumb, to be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, like, it's people who just they do it for fun. I mean, you know, they enjoy it, whatever. I just don't really put too much stock into it by any means. Everybody's got their own different opinion on the matter, though.
Very fair point. So, do you concur with that, Zoomkins? How did you feel about the trolling and the jokes?
Well, I'm with Affinity. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was hilarious that people would take their time to do it. But in another sense, it's kind of to be expected. Like, when things happen, people, like, a lot of people fanboy certain guilds and stuff, and a lot of people, like, for any competitive atmosphere, people like to pick sides. Like, even if you look at sports teams, you know, you could be rooting for all the sports teams, but what's the fun in that? People like to pick a specific one and, you know, go after, like, you know, speak the opposite of another.
Although it's an interesting thing that you raised, though, because if you look, for example, let's take I don't know, tennis as a sport, and you've got the world's best tennis players, you know, the top 5 male and female tennis players, and people really respect them. They respect their ability, they respect their talent, and so on. And we seem to have a bit more of an image problem with raiding. Within the gaming community itself, I'm not even talking about the wider strata of society. I'm talking specifically about the gaming community. We sometimes struggle with people accepting this level of competition amongst raiders. It seems to be belittled a lot, questioned a lot, negative terms. Not even the jokes that were going back and forth with those images. It's more this sort of, well, what do you expect? No lifers. They're just, you know, they're cheaters or whatever, you know. So I wonder about that. Like, can we ever create an atmosphere where we've got that sort of healthy degree of competition, healthy degree of respect, and where people could validly have teams that they support, and a bit more of that sort of friendly rivalry that you get between, you know, the top football teams and so on? I mean,
definitely. I think there's actually really a shift that's going on now that we're all, you know, sort of experiencing. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of, like, sponsored gameplay going on with, like, and one thing that's really evident is StarCraft is so big right now to where people follow these players and they hold a lot of respect for what they do for competitions, you know, and we're seeing that in one game, and it just, I mean, not every game can be exactly the same, but in gaming wise, there's a lot of, foundations and corporations that are all coming up to help paint this in a better light, because there's a lot of misconceptions that everyone knows, the stereotypes about people who play games and whatnot, and we're all trying to break them and, you know, show everybody the truth, really.
Although I will admit that I was surprised by that sort of, that we have these sort of levels of acceptance within our own sort of broader gaming community. I always assumed when I started my research that there would be a general sort of across the board, well, gaming's fine, it's cool, you do it the way you want, and, you know, everyone has a right to game if they're able to. but there was a little bit more of an attitude about the type of gaming that's considered more acceptable. Like, if someone's more avidly interested in achievements or social aspect of the game, they don't understand why raiders are raiding. There seems to be a bit of an us and them sort of attitude, even within the sort of broader World of Warcraft community, which I guess I just found particularly perplexing because I wasn't expecting that.
Well, I think unlike a lot of games, World of Warcraft is a little different. Like we've said to each other back and forth, and even Rig just said earlier, when you're raiding, you really are, like that's why he said, he doesn't pay attention to it. And the same thing, Shinafae, you're really playing against yourself. Like, let's take another US guild, for instance, like Vodka or something. Like they're not coming into our instance and, like we're not fighting each other for a boss. It's really, we go in there and we're trying to clear content as fast as we can within our own guild, at the best we can. And then in the end, somebody ends up doing it faster, or, there's different complications with different sort of players, internet or hardware, whatever. And you're really just playing against yourself, and you're just trying to do your best and keep focused. And unlike other games or sports teams where, do you say tennis, there's one man physically beating another man out, in the match, it's a completely different atmosphere, and that's why like World of Warcraft is kind of different, and there's a bigger stretch, and in the margin of people's thinkings.
Interesting thought. So, Nodozz, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
This is so put your thinking cap on here, or
Oh god.
Reflect.
I gotta find that and dust it
Put your
off.
smoking jacket on, your thinking cap, and get a cigar out, and give me your deep insight here. As I said, I look at things kind of on a bigger scale, and there has been a drop in the subscription rate. And every time there's a new MMO that comes out, everyone says, "Oh, this is the
The WoW
onset of the
killer.
demise. Yes, WoW is going to die, and this is the end, and raiding is dead, and who cares? And this game is for losers." And there's usually that really joyful interaction that we generally have that I'm so proud of with our gamers. Do you agree with that? And do you think if in some scenario it does happen that raiding sort of goes on a downward spiral, would you guys as a guild shift to another server, another game? I mean, do you think another game could support raiding like Blizzard's been able to do with World of Warcraft? And so what do you think about this?
I think that eventually WoW will die. One day, I don't know, maybe in 2 years, 3 years, WoW will die. And I think that a lot of us who play today will still be playing at that point in time, and we'll be faced with the decision of whether or not to give up this relationship that we've had with these people for the last 6-7 years, or to just go on to a new game. And it'll be a very simple decision for most of us. So, in answer to one of your questions, yes, I definitely think Blizzard will be playing a different game at some point in time in the future as a guild together. I don't know when that will be, though. We've had all these games come across, like Aeon and Rift and Star Wars now, and all these games like the WoW killer, but everyone always comes back to WoW. It's the place where people are. It's the place where you meet all your friends, and I don't know, it's just the place that you've loved and had a great time with the last 5 years, or 7 years rather. I don't think that that's going to go away very easily, and there's still millions of people playing this game. Like our server, for example, Illidan, has thousands and thousands of people. You can't tell that the game's dying at all on our server. So in our minds, it's as strong as it's ever been, and we're going stronger than we ever have. Recruitment is still happening, and it always is happening. I don't see it going away anytime soon. Maybe when Blizzard releases their new MMO, maybe it might happen then, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. It's just, even when the game content goes away and the game becomes less fun and the monsters are less exciting to kill, as we've seen, like most of the villains, the big villains in WoW have already been vanquished. You stay for the people, and the people don't go away. The people don't change. The game changes, and if the game's still bad, I'll probably still be playing just to play with the people I've been playing with for 3-4 years now in Blood Legion. And that's just how it'll be. Like, you stay for the people, and you raid for the people. And I don't really play any other games because I've put so much time into WoW at getting good, and I don't feel like doing that over with another game. And I think a lot of people in the same boat. It's like I've been playing this game for so long, and I've pushed myself so hard, and I've spent so many hours on it. When you quit, you throw all that away, and it's just the over. And like to throw all that away and to stop doing that is just kind of an impossible thought. It's all I've known for the last 5 years as far as gaming goes. It's just WoW, like basically more than anything else. And yeah, as Dan pointed out, I mean, Blood Legion was formed in Diablo 2. That was where the guild started. And then WoW came out, and they all went there. I'm sure that when something like that comes around again, it will transition just the same.
So we'll just have to see. I think it's nice to hear that on some level, but also, it's interesting because, it's probably always in the back of our minds. But yeah, I think it's that social connection. And there's actually a lot of guilds that have done that they retain those connections above and beyond games, and they'll try out new games together. But, and they've had, as you say, you guys meet each other in real life. You have that sort of social connection that goes above and beyond sort of the virtual environment. So, but just thinking actually, because you raised an interesting point there, Nodozz, about your server. And you are a very well populated server. You're the most populated server in the US, I think. And aside from a couple, I think actually it's hard to say because different sites give different bits of data, but Illidan is really quite a well-populated server, and it's always been that way, hasn't it, as far as numbers go?
It
has.
Been
very interesting.
And it just started that way. I mean, it just happened that like some of the top guilds were here, and there were 3 or 4 guilds that were very, very competitive, 2 being in the top 5, top 10 in the U.S. for a very long period of time, and those guilds just draw a lot of people into them, and those guilds were around for a very long time, and a lot of people were brought to the server as a result of a well-structured, competitive raiding scene, and it hasn't changed on Illidan. There's still lots of guilds that are striving to do a lot, and where there's runs always happening, there's always going to be people around. In Illidan, you can literally get a raid for anything, any time of the day. It's just the game isn't dying on Illidan. If your server, I could definitely see servers that are less populated where you might not see anything going on in trade chat. There's not stuff to do during non-prime hours, and it might seem like the game is dying. Just suck it up and pay that $25, and you'll be like reinvigorated with the amount of stuff there is to do and the amount of people that are still playing this game on certain high pop servers.
Yeah, it's interesting too, that sense of migration, that people will move to be where people are. So again, disputing, I would suggest, the sort of notion that gamers are very antisocial. We tend to crave it, just like any general human activity. We want to be near each other. So Riggnaros, what's on the horizon for the guild? Are you guys excited about Mr. Pandaria? Are you going to become a panda monk yourself, or what are you going to do?
No, I'll probably I've got 1 of each tank class and 3 death knights. So I mean, I'll obviously make a monk tank, but I'm definitely gonna stick with my DK as long as it's a viable option. But as far as the guild's plans, yeah, we're definitely gonna just still be going, still doing our thing, and doing the best that we can wherever that puts us. So be it. We obviously have our own goals, and those are pretty high. I won't put a number on it, but just like keep saying, more or less just do as good as we can and compete against ourselves once we're in there on progression, see where that puts us. And we enjoy the direction where the guild's going. It's not doing anything but getting better from this point. I know there's a lot of people that you hear more or less are that want to move to the new games like you're talking about, and it's more or less like they're just looking for something to stop playing WoW. I mean, and that's everybody's own decision that they have to make, but I mean, another thing that I think that would tie into a question you asked earlier about what separates Blood Legion from a lot of other guilds is just the commitment level to what people have to the game. I mean, there's a lot of people here that just enjoy playing just because they enjoy the game, not because they feel obligated to play because someone else is playing or things like that. I mean, the vast majority of raiders that we have here just want to play, and I think that's a really big difference, especially in just the guild environment. So we'll see how this happens. I don't know. It's got a lot of potential. Hopefully it pans out.
Yeah, hopefully it pandas out.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was terrible. So remind everyone, as we're recording this, it's 1:30 in the morning here for me in England, so I can be excused for my terrible joke there. So Affinity, I've got a question for you. Brand new person, up and coming, wants to get into raiding. What advice would you give them?
What advice? Well, I mean, I guess you have to have the dedication to play at this level. Even if it's just the time commitment, there's a lot involved in raiding in a top-end guild, and outside of understanding your class to your best extent, you just need to be able to feel confident that you can play with these kind of people. There's someone who says, maybe I can play at this level, and you just need to be that person that can say, I can do that, I want to do that, this is my goal.
Very good. I like that. So we're now coming towards the end of our interview here, and I've pre-warned everybody that I was going to ask some fairly absurd questions. And they don't know what the questions are, so I'm going to catch them off guard. Consider it a somewhat psychological test. I'll start us off with some fun ones, and then I'll build up to the really weird ones. And I'll just say that this is why the internet was invented, to find strange things. So, Shinafae, what's your very favourite raiding instance of all the instances?
I would have to say Old War. Great art design, great encounter design. Just had the whole package. Nice.
That's very true. A lot of people invoke that particular instance. So, very nicely said. Zoomkins. This is a difficult one. What type of raiding boss would you like to see that has not existed before?
Oh, you did have to give me that one, huh?
I know. It can also be the way it looks as well. So it doesn't have to necessarily just be like, you don't have to describe the steps of the fight. But what would be fun for you?
For me?
Yeah.
Just something that, that's a little more in depth, because as a ranged DPS for a lot of fights, it's kind of just move here, DPS that, move there, DPS that. But I think, if there was something that include where maybe you go into different phases, maybe you go from you're gaining an ability that you need to use, kind of more like a vehicle bar, and then switching back multiple times. I don't know, something that
like a Yogg-Saron situation where you had to go into the boss and do different things in different places,
or getting a different ability set or something. Because I think the hardest part is reacting on the fly for a lot of people, because a lot of people are really easily set in doing their normal rotations and DPSing and such, or multi-dotting or whatever. But I think catching people off guard with a different skill set would be pretty cool. Maybe even swapping classes with somebody randomly in the raid, knowing how to play more than one class on your own.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting idea. You kind of have to randomly switch. Cool idea. Do you guys agree with me that we really need an underwater raid instance?
No.
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 Sure.
It's so unfair. Nobody agrees with me.
The druid says yes.
Okay. Yay. Okay.
I mean, the instance could be underwater, but if I'm
Yeah.
moving underwater, movement, no thanks.
Oh, come on. It's so much fun. I go to that zone just to chill out. I love being underwater. It's really cool. So
Seems like another raid where you'd have 30 druids on your roster.
Aquatic form, no big deal.
who needs anything but druids, They can do everything.
You don't need anything except for druids, because they are the
Exactly.
master race.
I should clarify to everyone that I do not play a druid, so I'm not pro druid. I'm
Sorry
pro
to hear.
everybody. Right. Okay. So, Affinity, favorite raid boss ever.
Favorite raid boss? See, that's a really hard one. I haven't been a hardcore raider for very long. I would say.
Okay. Just go from your depth of experience.
A personal favorite, probably, at least for me, is going to be Spine. I know a lot of people really, 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 really hate this fight, but from a personal experience, I was changing classes. I was helping with healer organization a lot. So for, a personal standpoint, I felt that was one of my more favorite ones, simply because of kind of how I grow with that fight as a player.
Excellent. Very nice. And very challenging, too, because I'm sure a lot of people will be shaking their heads right now. What's your favorite raid boss, Nodozz?
Young Zero is really fun as a rogue. Pre Fan of Knives, Interrupt, nerf. So I just got to spam famine knives, and like going down in the dream phase was a lot of fun. And that was like my first boss I did with Blood Legion. So I was an app and a trial member and having Fury yell, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of drama, a lot of just excitement, and like that was the first like most epic kill I've ever had. It was highest I'd ever been in any guild, and it was a lot of fun. Then that, and then I would say like kill Jaden because it felt so epic. One of my best friends like in game who used to be in Blood Legion was the guild leader and raid leader, and I'd been with him for about 2 years, and like it just felt so epic. And I don't know, him, it just being him, like he was like one of my best friends in game, like forever, and just like finishing that instance where we did in a guild that wasn't really that highly ranked before was pretty epic. But yeah, the fight and Sunwell was my favorite zone, so ending that up with an epic fight was pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of people, talk about Sunwell, a very well loved area. So, right, Shinafae, if you had to lose a sense, now we're going into real life now. If you had to lose a sense of either eyesight, hearing, or the ability to taste, which would you choose?
I would choose hearing. My hearing is not actually that excellent, so I think it would be the least loss, relatively speaking.
Sight would make it a bit challenging to raid as well,
Yes.
I would imagine. Yeah. So, very good. Zoomkins, would you rather lose an arm but be better looking, or be shorter than you are but smarter than you currently are? Yeah, see, I told you these were going to get difficult.
I don't know. I guess I could go even shorter.
You can go even shorter.
I don't know. Arms are really important. I don't know if I could,
Not
dealing
for a
with
raider
arms.
especially. I mean,
a lot of things.
that's
It's
tricky. And as I often say, I mean, raiding is proof that men can multitask. So, you guys wouldn't be able to multitask as well anymore. So, right. Riggnaros, this is a very difficult question. Would you rather be, and I apologize to those that have delicate mindset here, this is a somewhat scandalous question. Would you rather be a member of the opposite sex for the day or have sex all day?
Definitely the latter of the two options. I don't know
Have sex all day.
who would pick
Like the
the
safe
opposite.
answer. But you'd only be a woman for one day.
No,
I
I
mean,
have zero
no.
interest in that
Don't
whatsoever.
want to understand how we want. See what we have to do
Nope.
with Shinafae? It's terrible. It's not fair. So, all right, fair enough. Fair enough. It doesn't say who you'll be having sex with all day, though. So, I'm just saying. So, right, okay. Now this is a really weird one, so I'm going to ask Nodozz this.
Oh god.
Would you rather sweat mayonnaise or wake up every day covered in ham but not know why?
Definitely ham, because at least you can like wash off before you like go somewhere in public.
I'm
And
just so
mayonnaise
glad
is
you
like-
didn't say that you could eat it. That was I was worried.
No. I mean, if you
Have
wake up in
done
the
that
morning,
before?
I guess you'd really be like freaked out, like why is this happening to me? But you could definitely wash off before anyone sees it.
That's true.
And the mayonnaise is like one of the most disgusting smelling things ever.
Yeah.
Even though I do enjoy mayonnaise, it's not very well smelling, and it would be very odd to see someone sweating mayonnaise. So yeah, no,
Well, it's just oil and egg yolks mixed together, really. That's all mayonnaise is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's why I don't eat it. So. Right. Affinity. Would you rather always say things out loud without thinking first, or would you rather think a lot without saying anything? I don't know.
I would go with think a lot but not say it, I guess. I don't know. I
Well, he already
probably
does the first one, so
Yeah, I mean, I say stuff that maybe I should have thought more about first, so I guess I would go with the second option.
Yeah, and I suppose you can always type, It gives you a bit of an out, but you'd be a very strong and silent type then, I suppose, so. Now, Shinafae, would you rather breathe like Darth Vader for the rest of your life, or talk like Yoda?
I would say probably talk like Yoda, because if I was breathing like Darth Vader, I'd probably have a bad pulmonary issue, and I don't think I'd want that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, especially considering that you've lost your hearing, so it's sort of, that would be a double whammy, wouldn't it? So, yeah. And I'm going to ask my last one of Riggnaros. Would you rather be Spider-Man or Superman?
Superman. No
Ah, you
question.
answered that one much faster than the previous one.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big Superman fan, and
Are you?
I think yeah, I'm actually anti-Spider-Man would be a better way to present that.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not a fan.
Interesting. Oh, I just realised I had one more question. This is for you, Zoomkins. Would you rather be stuck in a small elevator for 7 days with 2 people that you didn't like, or be trapped on the on the top of a 30-story building for 3 hours before you got rescued? I mean, those.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being stuck. I'm not scared of heights. I think it'd be more refreshing actually than being stuck in an elevator. I wouldn't even mind that.
Okay, cool beans. All right then. Well, you've all answered the questions. Very interesting. I'll let you know what this all means later. So, but this wraps up my very interesting discussion with the guys from Blood Legion. So, thanks again to Shinafae, Zoomkins, Nodozz, Riggnaros, and Affinity. Really appreciate your time, and give you a chance to say farewell if you like, and we'll wrap things up.
Oh yeah, thanks for having us, and definitely enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Fun
you.
interview. Thank you.
Thank you.